Welcome everybody. I want to tell you that we are recording so that we can share this with people who couldn't come tonight. And I'm going to pull up my slides right now so that you can see what we are going to be doing. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm getting all these little messages from the computer. So welcome. What I would like you to start with is writing in the chat who you are or where you came from and why you're here tonight. Something like what I might say to you, I'm Tanya, I'm coming from Virginia Beach tonight, and I'm here to hear my friend Dorothy's story about her mother. So this is a good moment to type in the chat. And by the way, I will be sharing the chat later with Dorothy. She'll be able to read all the nice things everyone is saying tonight. The only time I don't want you to type in the chat is when she is telling her story. All right, let's let Devora in. Great. All right, so let's get started, if that's okay with you. If you don't know who we are Teach the Shoah. What do we do? Well, we are dedicated to ensuring that the story of the Holocaust remains relevant and resonance. We challenge ignorance and hate. How do we do it? We are telling testimony-based stories. We want to build personal connections to the stories of the Shoah, and we want the lessons and stories of the Holocaust to be spread to people of all generations and all backgrounds. Besides this program, this coffee house, and we'll be having these every single month, so I hope you'll come back often. We also offer all kinds of other programs at our website, www.teachtheshoah.org. I'll put that in the chat a little bit later for you. I am Tanya Wisoker. I'm a storyteller. I'm an instructor. I'm a coach. I'm a board member. And tonight, our featured teller is Dorothy Gold. She's going to wave, and then I will be introducing you, Dorothy, in a few more minutes. Can you give everybody a wave, Dorothy? I know you're on a tablet. It's hard to see. So one thing I do want to tell you about is one program that we have coming up soon. This is going to be November 9th. It's a Sunday evening. We are going to be talking about what we call Kristallnacht, also known as the November Pogrom. This was something that took place horrifically in 1938 in the German Reich. And what we'll be doing for that is a history and story infused program. We'll be talking about Kristallnacht and also about Kindertransport, and that's going to be led by our very own Teach the Shoah historian, Lynn Feldman. I am going to post that registration link in the chat in case I forget that afterwards. So just give me a moment to do that. And I will definitely be showing that again for you. Okay. So what are we going to do tonight? We're going to listen to a story of the Holocaust. As I told you, Dorothy's going to be telling. We'll spend some time appreciating that story, noticing what happens inside us as we're listening to this. She's going to tell us a little bit also about her process for developing this story. She's going to walk us through, and see, Diane just wrote in the chat. Thank you, Diane. She's going to walk us through a couple of photos, and then we'll have a little bit of time to ask her some questions. That whole process will take about 90 minutes, about an hour. And at that point, I'm hoping some of you will stay with us for another maybe 30 minutes for a kind of a workshop session where you'll just have a little taste of how you could be learning how to do what Dorothy's doing here. I am not going to ask you to tell a story. You will not have to come up with anything on your own. So do not worry a bit about that. Okay, so look at all these great faces. It is only 5 after 6. Let me just see. Hinda Bloom just got here. How many people we have? I think we're just about everybody is here. Again, this is Teach the Shoah. We're going to be starting with Dorothy's story tonight. If you could write in the chat a little bit, a message saying why you're here, where you're coming from. Dorothy, I know, is in Baltimore. I'm in Virginia Beach, and you all are probably all up and down the East Coast and beyond. Some of you I know are coming from the West Coast and maybe even further away from than that. Okay, so what are we going to do tonight? Let me just tell you a little bit. We are doing what is a sacred tradition, and that would be storytelling, something that you've heard all your life. Every kind of storytelling requires an audience, and together we embrace that story. We make the story together. We're going to take a moment right now to just kind of prepare ourselves to receive this story. Holocaust stories are a little bit different. Let's take a moment before we listen to Dorothy. You might want to close your eyes for a moment. I ask you to pay attention to your breathing. Just take a nice deep cleansing breath and exhale slowly. This is something we do before every program. Holocaust stories are heavy, and we want to be ready for them. You might notice your posture. Are you sitting comfortably in your chair, feet on the ground? You could roll your shoulders a little bit. It is late. It's 8 o'clock in the evening, so you might want to stretch a little bit. Couple more deep breaths, and then we are going to get into it. Every Holocaust story is a little bit different, and I hope that tonight you can set aside anything that's going to distract you and just listen with your whole self. I hope you'll mute your mic at this point. If you have a question, you can write it in the chat, and hopefully I will see it. And if I don't, you could actually interrupt me while I'm talking. I will not be offended. We are not going to interrupt Dorothy, though. All right, so I'm going to bring up a slide so that you can see a little bit more about Dorothy's. All right. So I'm going to introduce you to our teller. Dorothy Gold. She is a child of Holocaust survivors from small towns in Poland. Both of her parents were survivors of labor camps and 3 years in Auschwitz. Dorothy grew up in suburban Detroit, and she currently lives in Baltimore in Maryland. She's a retired oncology social worker and is active in various volunteer efforts, including the resettlements locally of several Afghan families. Dorothy is the married mother of 3 adult children and the grandmother of 2. And tonight, Dorothy is telling the story of her mother, Felina Gold. Felina Gold was born in Kladowa, Poland in 1924 to Esther and Chaim Spurka. Felina was the oldest of 3 daughters and the only survivor of her nuclear family, as her parents and her sisters were gassed in Chelmno. Felina was separated from her family and taken to a labor camp around the end of 1939, early 1940, where she met her future husband, Wolf Gold. They were both sent to Auschwitz in January 1942 and were separated for the duration of the war, and then miraculously reunited in Poland after liberation. They immigrated to Detroit, Michigan, with the help of an uncle there. Let me take this down. I'm going to spotlight you, Dorothy. Dorothy's going to be telling the story of, now I have to figure out how to do spotlight in case I have forgotten it. There we go. All right. Dorothy's going to be telling the story of her mother, Felina, in the first person, and her story begins in a labor camp in Poland in 1941. Dorothy, are you good to go?
Yep.
All right, I'm
Yes.
going to mute myself and hopefully everybody else's mic is off.
We were running. Wolf and I were running. We had escaped from the forced labor camp where we'd been for about a year in Poland. We first met, Wolf and I. We worked together in the kitchen. He was so nice. He was so kind, so good. He helped me. And we got close. And now we were running, getting away from that place. We didn't know where we were going. We just wanted to get away. We didn't know if we were going to live or die. We figured we had nothing to lose. So we ran in the fields and slept in barns or outdoors. But but then I thought, I'm a young girl, just 16. He was 20. We're running, but I'm not even married. Well, we'll get married, Felina. And so we did. In a small town, we found a Jewish man. You didn't need a rabbi, just one Jewish man and two Jewish witnesses. And they married us. They even used a silver dollar to make me a ring. And then we kept running until we were caught. They took us back to the same camp. Good. Good, you say? Yes, we were alive and we knew the camp. We knew the people there. We knew our way around. I even got to work in the kitchen again. But, and it was a big but, I found that I was pregnant. Pregnant? I can't be pregnant. You can't be pregnant here. So I knew I had to hide this pregnancy. And I had help. The women in the barracks, they helped me, and some of the German officers. Some of them were actually born or grew up in Poland. They were a little nicer, but we also could bribe them. You see, I had two uncles that had a chocolate factory in Amsterdam, and they were able to send us packages, chocolate, marzipan, coffee. Oh, we kept some for us, but we used it as bribes. So when there was an inspection, we knew. And the women, they would put me in a bed and use extra pillows, and they would cover it with a blanket so it looked just like all the other beds in the barracks. And then the officers would come, and the pregnant women, the naked women would be standing there, and up and down they would inspect who was weak and who was strong, who was healthy and who was sick, because if you couldn't work, gone out of there. And when it was over, the women would come up and uncover me. My baby and I were safe one more day. Oh, oh, the pain. It was the baby coming. I was in the field. I didn't know what to do. I ran to the field. Oh, oh. I fell to the ground. I could feel the baby coming out. And then I looked up and I saw, looking down at me, was a German woman officer. She could have killed me, but she didn't. She went and she got a Jewish midwife, and the Jewish midwife finished the delivery. The midwife cut the umbilical cord, and I had my baby, a little girl, So beautiful, so wonderful, so sweet. My baby. And I knew I had to hide this baby now. Out, out, everybody up and out. We're leaving this camp. What was going on? We didn't know. It was the middle of the night. We were surprised. We were shocked. Oh, they love to shock you. Up, up, everyone. Follow us. I had my little girl in bed with me, holding her. She was 9 months old. We had hid her for 9 months. We didn't know what to do. We followed. And they took us to a field, an open field, in front of a building. All of us, the men and the women, together. Yes, my husband Wolf was there, and there were people from other nearby camps. We didn't know what was going on. We were there for 2, 3 days. Some people tried to escape, but if they caught you, they shot you right there. We saw a dear friend of ours shot and killed right in front of us. And then a train came, cattle cars. They pushed us in, they packed us in like sardines. It was horrible. The men and the women were separated at that time. It was so horrible, so tight, no food, little water. We were in the train for several days. We didn't know where we were going. We had heard about the death camps, the gas chambers. Was that where we were going? We didn't know. Finally, stops. We start to get off. It was Auschwitz. And an SS officer sees me with my little girl and he comes up and he says, "Give me, I'll take your little girl for you." And I said, "No, no, not my baby, not my little girl. She'll stay with me." And he said, "No, no, I'll take your baby. You're young, you're strong, you'll be working. We'll take care of your baby with all the other children." "No, no, please let me keep her. I want my baby." "You will give me your baby." And so I did. And then I looked around, I walked on the platform and I looked around. Chaos, noise, it was horrible. You couldn't see or hear anything. You didn't know what was going on. But I looked. Wolf, my husband, was he here? I couldn't see. I couldn't see in all the chaos. But then, from out of all the noise and chaos, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Felina! He was calling to me, and I knew he was there. My baby, my little girl, I still wanted so much to see her. Where was she? I wanted to see her. But I couldn't. They killed her. And after that, I stomped my foot and I said, "I will get out of here." Hmm, hmm, hmm. Call me Dre. We had just come back from a long day of hard, hard work. We were tired. We were hungry. We were starving. We were weak. We were always hungry and starving. But today was different because somehow we knew that today was Yom Kippur. And I don't know what overcame me, but spontaneously, I started to chant the Kol Nidre, just like my grandfather, a cantor, had chanted so many times back in Poland. And I looked around the room, the barracks, and the women, so peaceful, so emotional. Some had tears coming down their cheeks. Mm. Who was singing that song? In came our capo, the Jewish overseer. Well, we didn't want to get in trouble, so we just sat or stood there quietly, not saying a word. I said, who was singing that song? If you don't tell me, I'm punishing all of you. Well, I I didn't want the others to get punished because of me. So I said, it was me. I was singing that song. Well, follow me. Come with me. And I went, and the women looked after me, and we were all so scared. What was going to happen to me? What was she going to do? I didn't know, but I followed her, and we walked, and then she opened the door to another room, and there sat the Blakova. Yes, the head overseer of all of the block. Now I was really scared. What was going to happen to me? But she looked at me and quietly, I am Jewish too. Sing for me. And so I did. And she liked it. And she too got peaceful for a moment. And when it was over, she offered me food. She said, here, take some of our food, take it back. And it was good food, but I said, no, I cannot take your food today. I'm fasting. It's Yom Kippur. We'll come back tomorrow and you can get some food tomorrow. And I did. I went back the next day and I got that extra food. And it was good food, so much better than our food. And I took it back to the barracks and I shared it with all the women. Mm, so good, so good. And I sang. I sang other times too. And the women in my barracks that I worked with, they loved my singing. Sometimes they would actually do my share of the work. So I would sing for them because it made the work easier, more pleasant. Yes, my voice, my singing brought some joy to this living hell. Out, out, everybody, up and out. We're emptying out this camp. Middle of the night again. What was going on? At this point, it was January 1945, winter. Come, they took us to the roads and they put us walking, marching. I now know that that was the death march. And we had to walk and march. If you couldn't keep up, if you didn't march, they shot you right there. Women were dropping. It was so cold. And did we rest? Oh, yeah, they let you rest. On the coal outside in the snow. It was horrible, horrible. I remember resting on that cold, cold coal. How many days was it? I don't remember. Maybe two, maybe three, five, six. Who knew you were so frightened? You were so scared, so confused. You didn't know day, night, time. We stopped then at another camp, Ravenstruck. But we didn't work there. They were like talking amongst themselves. They were trying to figure out what to do with us. Auschwitz had been closed. We were just there very briefly and back on the road. March, march, march. And then they took us to a very small camp and they put us to work. I was in the kitchen again, cooking, cleaning, feeding the soldiers. Some of the women were in the SS officers' homes. They had homes there, and they had to work for them and do whatever they were told to do. But in the kitchen, it was the regular soldiers, and they kept whispering amongst themselves. And then they whispered to us, and they said, "Don't worry, the war is almost over." The war almost over? We didn't know what to believe, but they were being nicer to us. We knew something was going on. But then back on the road, back to the marching. By now it was April 1945, several months of this. And they were marching with us. It's like they were running away. And then some of them started abandoning us. We were so confused. We did not know what to do or what was going on. So I, with 12 of my girlfriends, yes, girlfriends, you made some good friends there in the camps. We ran into the forest when we had a chance. We were in the forest. We didn't know what was happening. We thought we would be safer, but we didn't know what was going on. And then we met a German soldier, a lone German soldier, yes, by himself. And he looked at us and he said, "You're free. The war is over. You have been liberated." Free? Liberated? We couldn't believe him. So one of the girls went up to the closest city to check it out. And she came back and she said, "It's true. It's true. We've been liberated. The Russians have liberated us. They're up there helping the Jewish people, giving them food, giving them places to live, helping them." Free? Free? Over? So that day, 3.5 years since I was taken from my parents, I took my first steps towards freedom.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, thank you. Whew, boy, everybody take a deep breath. Ah, I'm going to take you off the spotlight. I know how hard that can be. Wow. Okay. Whew, Dorothy, can I give you some appreciations?
Sure.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate how you brought us right into the story, starting us right off running into the woods. You were breathing hard and you were fearful and you were confused. That was such a great way to start a story. It made me just be right there with Felina immediately. And also, I have to say, your use of your facial expressions and your gestures, when you said, so we got married, your smile was so big that I had to remember that it was not you, Dorothy, getting married in the woods, but that it was your mother, Felina, getting married. That was so immediate and realistic. And of course, uh, your labor pains and all that shock about losing your baby, all of those things were so powerful. I Yashikoa, I just so impressed. Oh my goodness.
Thank
So
you.
we are going to all get a chance. Well, no, not everybody, because that would take us all night. I'm sure that everybody here would like to spend a good 5 or 10 minutes just sharing with Dorothy your impressions. So here's what I want you to do. You can definitely follow Michelle's lead here in the chat. Remember, I'm going to share all of this with Dorothy. I will just type it all. I will copy and paste it for her so she'll get to read all of your wonderful appreciations in the chat. And I'd also invite you, if you would like to raise your actual real hand or your virtual hand, and I will call on a few people to also share your appreciations, your comments, your feedback for Dorothy about what resonated with you about her telling or about the story itself or how you felt. And then after that, we'll have a chance to look at a few photos and then we'll answer questions. So you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat. That's okay. And then when we get to the question part, Dina, I will read yours. But for the moment, I invite anybody to raise your hand if you would like to share some appreciations for the moment. And Dina, I'm calling on you first because you have your hand raised up, and you can also click the little button to undo the raised hand to make it easier so that we can. And then once you start speaking, I think we'll see you immediately.
Okay, Dorothy, fabulous job. From the first time I met you, you've done nothing but fabulous jobs. One of the one of the things that stuck out to me, perhaps in part because my parents were partisans in the forest, was she started in the forest. She got married in the forest. She got liberated from in the
Ooh.
forest. And to have that follow her through the story, I thought was very effective.
Yeah, I actually didn't think of that. I thought of some of the things that that sort of happened over time, but yeah, that is one too. You're right.
Good point. I had not noticed that either. Michelle.
Dorothy, absolutely breathtaking. It's hard to follow the two that came before me, but I'll use the approach of one thing that stood out for me is I've never so much felt to be in someone's head the way you shared her inner thoughts. It just, you weren't Dorothy anymore. You were Felina. And I would just, look around to see who was coming and feel your pain. I mean, you gave birth to that child. It was He's so realistic. Uh, I could go on, but it's just, I've seen you. We've been in class together. I've seen you a couple times. And every time you tell a story, I learn something. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, who else is going to? Beth, would you unmute and talk to us?
Yes, I was so riveted, and I don't know, did your mother ever share, did she ever connect again with any of her friends there? And I put in the chat, but did they find each other, your dad and your mom, through an agency or?
No, it's part of the story that I'm hoping to add so that I can add to it, but um they ended up she kept looking for the ways to find people, and then she wrote a letter to his hometown, and he was there, and he got the letter, and that's how he went, and they got reunited. He went and she was in Lodge, and he was back in his shtetl, and he went and got her. So
Did
it was
any of her
all.
friends
So I don't
emigrate?
know which ones, but like some of the people in Teach the Shoah, like me, grew up in, Holocaust community. And I just know that so many times we would go to bar mitzvahs and visit people in Canada, in Ohio, that were their camp friends. So for a while, they did keep up with some of those friends, at least for a while. Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
Mhm.
Jim, do you want to share something?
I do. Thanks, Laura. Okay. Hi, Tanya. Uh, Dorothy, at first, in the beginning, I was worried would we lose the internet?
Yeah.
And then the longer you continued, I totally forgot that. And even though I've heard your telling of much of all of this, uh, your mom's history with your father before, when you described how she had to give up her baby, it's like you put me right there. And the way even though I've heard you practice and I've heard you present, it's like I heard this for the first time. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
Jim, that was an excellent appreciation. Jill.
Yes, hi. Um, well, first of all, I appreciate how, I mean, it was a long story, and I really appreciate how you really kept it, all together. Because that was a lot of, details to remember and to get straight, to keep straight. And I think that, was fantastic. And I really appreciated your facial expressions because it really helped, get into the mood and to feel the mood. Um, and I also appreciate like the fact that obviously I know that you've practiced this and rehearsed this, but it didn't feel overly, you know, rehearsed. It wasn't perfect because it's not supposed to be perfect. It's just supposed to be genuine. So I like the fact that it was, well rehearsed, but not overly rehearsed. Because it just really felt like, you were just this person just telling their story, what happened to them. And I really, felt that. So yeah, I really appreciate it. It was
Thank
excellent.
you. Thank you.
Jill, that's an important point. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a big piece of what we do at Teach the Shoah. Jeannie, you're still on mute.
It was awesome. And as I wrote in the chat, we were with you slash Felina every step of the way. I don't think you told a story. I think you embodied the story. It was as if you had been there and you were sharing it on a minute to minute, day to day basis with us. It surpassed storytelling. Very, very moving, very impactful.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate all the appreciations.
Well, we have good appreciators, but we also have a good storyteller here to appreciate. Thank you, Jeannie. Jennifer.
Oh, Dorothy, fantastic. So, as you know, I've heard your story many times and had the tremendous privilege of working with you, but not for this telling at all. And I really, really, I mean, there were so many things I wrote down, so I will try to say a few of them quickly. I agree with everything else that was said. Just how I'm going to just point out some particular things, how you absolutely glowed when you were holding the baby. I mean, you were absolutely glowing holding Felina's daughter, your daughter in the story, and then how completely serious you got as all of a sudden the glow of motherhood transformed into the tremendous responsibility and burden of motherhood in that moment, and we could just feel that. And there was the part where you were heading to when you were talking about we don't know where we're going. And now since we all know what happened, so many of the horrors, to hear you in the midst of the story, meaning Felina, not knowing. She doesn't benefit from the hindsight. She has no idea where she's going. And she's heard these horrible stories about gas chambers and camps. And that idea of like, is that where we're going? We didn't know. And you really brought us in to the horror, not only of the things that happen, but the horror of not knowing. the way the awareness that the Nazis had killed the baby, and just the way you took that in, and you paused, and then there was this shift. I am going to get out of here. We could feel not only with the power of your words, but it was really, and I think everybody's getting at this, that embodiment that Jeannie was talking about, that the words and the expressions and all those were incredibly powerful. But the only reason you could do that, besides that you have a lot of talent, is that you were there. And so it just emanated through these tools of expression and voice. Your pacing throughout was just the amount of time that we needed to leave one scene and enter another. And I will say one last thing is that the way you became the different people and were able to switch so seamlessly, particularly in the scene with the capo and the singing, where you are there singing, the capo comes in and says, come with me, or who did that? And you raise your hand, and you can feel that you have completely taken on, even as you did it in first person as Felina, you had these moments where you were absolutely first person, the other person. Absolutely tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you. You gave me a good start, so I appreciate the foundation.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Well, everybody, let's go to, you can keep writing appreciations as they occur to you. Dorothy, can you tell us a little bit about how you created this story?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially because a few people commented on how I embodied my mother and I became her. So, I started really way back wanting to somehow write my parents' story down, not for a book, but for my family. And I was trying to figure out how to do that. And then I found out about the Teach the Shoah program for storytelling. And I thought, oh, what a perfect way to start to tell the story if I wanted to write it. And when I started the classes, and people said you can do it in first person or third person. And at first I was doing it in third person because I thought, first of all, I thought I'd never be able to do it storytelling. And then I thought I could never do it in first person. But as I did it, I felt like I was becoming, it helped me, first of all, get closer to my mother during that time so that I felt like, yes, I can be her because, and we have her testimony from the Spielberg Shoah Foundation, so I could listen to it. And she, more than my father, had talked about it. Um, so, and so I knew that I wanted to do her story, tell it from her point of view and not my father's at this point, and telling about the baby, because as a young kid growing up, I knew that I had this potential of having a sister that I never had. And I had an older brother, and you always think you want an older sister. So I felt by focusing at first on the baby, I was giving some life, some importance to this child that never made it out. And that became really important to me. And then as I was able to grow the story, and in fact, went for my class, it was a shorter story. So I just ended it, I think, about the baby. But as I was able to make it a little bit longer for some presentations, I added the Yom Kippur, the Kol Nidre story, because that's one that in my family, we talked about, like my children know about it, and it's sort of like an important part of our history. And even my little granddaughter heard about the story that, because she's named after my mother, the song that Felina sang before they took her, she has some version of it. So I really felt good about adding that. And I also feel that after the horror of telling the story about the baby, to tell something that had a little bit of a brighter, for that time was good. And then the last scene, I thought I felt good about giving an end to it. Like she started out being taken away from her parents. I don't tell that in my original story. I started with that. And then 3.5 years later, which is a very long time, to know that she was finally liberated after living through that for 3.5 years. So it sort of evolved, but it was very heartening to hear from people saying how they really felt like I was her and I embodied her, because as I worked on this story and as I worked on, that's how I felt. And I felt like she was with me again, even though she hasn't been alive for a long time. So it's been satisfying.
Thank you. Dorothy, I also want to tell everybody here that as part of what Dorothy's doing with Teach the Shoah, she's also told some other stories. Um, we have storytellers who will do some research, listen to some testimony from people whom they're not related to. And that is another way to bring the stories of the Holocaust, the experiences of people um, alive, and give voices to those people. Dorothy, can I bring up your pictures?
Sure.
Okay, so can you tell us about this map?
Yeah, so this is a picture of the different shtetls in central Poland, and very interesting. Part you can see down, I don't know how you're seeing it, but it's down there. And that's where my mother was from. And my father was from Dąbrowica, which is actually very close. But of course, they didn't know each other before the war, but they came from two shtetls that were very close to each other. And then up here on the very top, there's a city, Lubrenik, I don't know how to say it, but in her testimony, she says that's where they got married, in that city. And they had escaped from the labor camp. So I'm assuming that that is close to where their labor camp was. So in their first journey, they didn't go that far from home when they took them to the forced labor camp. And of course, down below is Chełmno, and that's where her parents, and actually my father's parents, were all taken, and there was no work there. They were all just gassed and killed there. So this is the part where a lot of the story happened, except for Auschwitz, which, so I thought that was just an interesting.
Yeah, it's always good to use maps to give us a little sense of place. So tell us about this one.
So I mentioned in the story about her uncles in Amsterdam that had the chocolate factory. So here to the left, the three men, the two younger ones are her uncles who had the chocolate factory and who were able to send the packages. And the one in the middle is actually my great grandfather, who had gone to Amsterdam at some point. He was a cantor there. And those were his two sons who had the chocolate factory. And the picture on the right is one of those uncles in the chocolate factory. I guess they made their own chocolate. So, and one of my cousins, who still is in Amsterdam, wrote a book about his family and includes the part about my mother. And that's where I got those pictures from.
Oh, that sounds like another story.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth telling. I know people don't know just how much helping and bribing and assisting family members were doing at that point.
And he didn't know about the packages and how that helped. So when I told him, he wrote the book first in Dutch, and when he translated it into English, I was able to give him that information. So he was happy to hear it.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. How about
And this
this?
is two pictures. So my parents, as I said, reunited in my father's hometown, that's Shtetl Dąbrowica, and they stayed there or then went to a nearby town. And my older brother was born in Poland. And so it looks like they had professional pictures taken in Poland. That's my mother with my brother, and that's my father with my brother, and you can see he's wearing a suit, although it looks a little baggy on him. And it almost looks like there's a backdrop there. So it's just interesting. We have nothing from their childhood because they left with nothing they left their homes when they were very young. She was 15, he was 18. And so they just have what they got when they were in Poland before they came to the United States. And it was about a year and a half. And interestingly, my brother was born there, but never had a birth certificate, I guess. And two of my cousins in Israel, the sons of my father's brother, who was with him in the camp, went back to the hometown and went to the city hall and found my brother's birth certificate. So now my brother, who is in his 70s, saw his birth certificate for the first time in his life.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And here's a picture of my mother of her number. Hers was very large. My father's was very small. But when I asked Lynn, our historian, she said it was just whoever did them, how they did it. It had no meaning. But she points out that if you see there's like a triangle under the six, that was really a part of a Jewish star, and that showed that they were Jewish.
Hmm.
And then this is just family pictures. My parents, who never had a real wedding, were able to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary before my father died. And so here's a family picture, my brother and his wife and me and my husband and three young kids. And my parents, we had them do like in a wedding where they fed each other some cake. So there were happy times, and they were able to be together for 50 years. And my father died the year after that. But that's what we think. They told us the date that they were married. I don't know how they knew and remembered, and don't think there was a marriage certificate. But anyway, I thought that sort of brings them to the present.
It does. That's just a sweet and fun picture.
That's what I thought.
It really is. And what a testament to their survival to see these three grandchildren here with you and Jim.
Yep.
Okay. I think we already talked about the sources you've used, and I think we're going to take a few questions now. I do want you to understand, everybody, that when we're talking about storytelling, Holocaust storytelling, we always are using primary sources. So yes, your conversations with your grandmother counts, but also diaries, memoirs, letters, photos in a photo album, recorded testimonies. I know Dorothy said that Felina, her mother, had given testimony for the Shoah Foundation at University of Southern California, which is Steven Spielberg's foundation. So we are looking for real stories and real voices, and we're also looking for facts. And we have a historian on the Teach the Shoah staff who can help with that. Let me
I just want
start.
to say one thing when you
Yep.
say that, and it's very interesting because some of the things I tell in my story, I actually use some of the same words that my mother used in her testimony. Like when I could, I actually incorporated her own words. So
Exactly. I'm going to take down the slides and allow you to take a few questions, and we'll do Dina's first because she had a question earlier. And I can see there's 5 of 9, so I hope everyone will be patient and let us do a couple of a few questions, and then we'll wrap up the first part of the program. So Dina, can you re-ask your question there?
I was asking how your mother avoided the roll call each morning.
it could be that in the labor camp, they didn't do it every morning roll call like they would in the in Auschwitz. But I honestly don't know. All I know is she said that people helped her to to hide the pregnancy and to hide, well, I know the baby they hid in their barracks. She told me that there was a fireplace there and they would put the baby in there when they came to check.
Hmm.
But I don't know what she did. I guess when her pregnancy wasn't noticeable, but I imagine they hid her or, came up with an excuse, or those guards that were friends were, they were bribing, let it go because they
Thank you.
did bribe people.
I'm looking to see if there was, I feel like there was another question. And I think Beth had already asked her question.
Yeah, and I answered
How
it.
did they find them? Is there anybody, Jeannie's, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you know the name that your mother gave to the baby?
So I do know, and it was in my story, but because of time, I took it out and they did not name the baby. She says very clearly named her because we knew we couldn't register her. So we just called her Baby Lala. That was it. So they never named her, which, yeah. And it's funny because I don't know why, but I always thought in my mind that I thought her name was Batya. And I don't know where I got that from. But, like I said, as a kid, I had all these fantasies about this baby. I even thought maybe one day we're going to find her. She's alive and she'll show up at our door and I'll have an older sister. So, you know, I don't know. My mother didn't talk about it that much. She did talk about it and, of course, talked about it in her testimony.
I love that, Dorothy, that you were thinking that you might see her. That's
Yeah.
really powerful. Thanks, Jeannie. Jennifer?
Yes, I know we're running out of time, so I just wanted to ask if I know you already spoke about how you never imagine yourself, doing storytelling at all aloud, let alone first person storytelling. And now that you've done this, I mean, many times, Dorothy, everybody should know, has performed for audiences in person and online to tremendous accolades. I mean, it's been very moving for everyone, for Jewish educators, all kinds of people. What has your relationship, I understand that your mom has passed, but what is your relationship? How has it transformed your relationship to your mother or with your mother since you have begun embodying?
Yeah, I feel like I said, as I was working on the story next. So, I've watched her testimony now so many times because every time I'm working on the story, even if it's a new presentation, there might be something I want to be sure I'm right about. Or this time I was adding, I'd never done the scene about the death march in a presentation, so that was new this time. So I listened to it and I always felt as soon as I started doing the storytelling with the teach of the show, I felt like it made me closer to her. It made, because during your life, you're close, but you're busy and, you don't think of all that. And now it made me feel like, oh, I wish she was here so I could ask her so many questions, of course. And same with my father, um, but yeah, it was really a good feeling. I have to say, it really has made me feel very good, very enriched, I don't know what adjectives to describe it, but it's been overwhelmingly wonderful, really. And Tanya mentioned the other story. So when they did the 80 on 80 for the liberation of Auschwitz and everybody was doing, so I actually took family stories, but so like my husband's mother was in the Holocaust, but he didn't know that much. So I said, you might know a little bit, just give me a little bit of information. I could do a 3-minute story. And so I did. And I did one on my father because I also didn't have a lot, but I had some, and one on my uncle. And that also made me feel good because it made me feel like now they're being remembered too, and we're connecting with them. And I think when you tell their story, it just gives you this powerful connection that, may have lost something over the years that they aren't alive. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dorothy. That
Thank you
was
for
that,
asking
that
that.
was the perfect ending for this. I'm going to bring up a slide here because really we're coming up on 9 o'clock, which is what we told you would be what time the main part of the program would take. I really hope you'll stay for another half hour max. I promise you, I will not ask you to tell a story. You don't have to do any hard work at all. On this slide here, you're seeing the Teach the Shoah team, but this does not include the names of over 100 storytellers, people like Dorothy, people like Jennifer, people like Dina, people like Jeannie. Many of you are here tonight. And they're also people just like you, even if you haven't done this yet, um, deciding to become part of this project to make sure the voices of those who experienced the Holocaust will continue to resonate in the future. That's what this is there for. I'm going to you're going to be getting an email anyway from Teach the Shoah because you are now on our mailing list, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. We have a website that you may or may not have seen before. Be patient with me. Copy and pasting into the chat is not the easiest thing to do. All of our sessions are free. Our goal is to give as many people as possible the chance to directly engage with these stories as a storyteller and as a listener. If you would like if you'd like to donate to help us with that goal, I have that link too for you. I'm going to remind you again that we have this program coming up on November 9th. This is a little bit different than the coffee house we just did with Dorothy tonight. This one is Crystal Knock and Kinder Transport. There will be some history interspersed with storytelling. It will be a fantastic program. That is here. I'm trying to do this as quickly as I can so that you can get it. And also, I want to tell you, in case you haven't noticed, since Dorothy mentioned it about the 80 for 80 stories, we have a YouTube channel. And on the YouTube channel, we have a lot of these small, short 3-minute stories that I'm going to say maybe 20 or 30 tellers have created. First for Auschwitz stories, we've done some Vilna stories. We're working on some Kristallnacht stories right now, as well as some of our longer stories. So if you open these up and, they'll open in tabs in your on your computer screen that you can look at later, or you can just go to the website a little bit later and take a look at them. And I think you will find that very, very, very rewarding.